Alright, guys, are you ready for something Halloween related? Well, okay, it's October, but still, you get what I'm saying. This is a grimdark story, and it's doubly entitled Something Sweet to Bite. You're probably wondering, what could that be about? Could be about candy. Or it could be something about meat? Well, you'd be right on that. Anyways, this is an MLP Grimdark, and I gotta tell ya, this one is, an interesting one. Remember how I mentioned in my, earlier MLP Grimdark reaction? Well, I mentioned something about something sweet to bite in there, and this is that exact Grimdark I'm going to, react to. So, in a 3, 2, 1...
Warning. The following
warning
reading contains
disclaimer,
subject matter that some listeners might find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised.
Evil gag.
A bat flit across the face of a monstrous harvest moon,
That's a
its
bat?
leathery wings sweeping through the chill autumn mist, leaving
That looks like
swirls
Batman
and spirals in
symbol
its
slightly.
wake. The creature of the night flew back and forth, eating the last bugs of the season. Fat as it was, the bat would need every scrap of weight it could put on before the harsh winter months. Already a few of its fellows had secluded themselves in caves and hollow trees, snug and plump, lost in half-sleep that would last until spring. A moth stirred up from its grass, its gossamer wings, making it a pale ghost in the moonlight. A quick snap of tiny jaws and the mouthful was gobbled down. With a surge of its wings, the bat flew on into the night. As it neared a barn blazing with light, the creature became somewhat curious. Usually at this time of night, the barn would be empty, dark and inviting for one of its kind. Instead, the bat could hear sounds of ponies busily at work inside. It would have flown closer for a better look, but a sudden chill ran down its spine, making it think twice. An instinct that even it barely understood.
Animal
Screamed
instincts, guys!
louder and clearer in
Animal
the bat's
instincts!
tiny head. Danger! Best to move on and find more prey. Best to find a safe spot and sleep in the deep, dreamless sleep of hibernation. Best to go far, far from here to do it. There is nothing here for a tiny bat. Nothing but death.
Animals know, guys! They know!
Apple Bloom!
Hey,
Called
Applejack!
Putting the last batch of caramel apples on a tray lined with waxed paper to cool. Benches set up in the barn lined the walls, half filled with the sugar-coated fruit.
Oh,
Where has that filly gone off to?
She muttered to herself.
that's weird.
A
Isn't the
cauldron,
picture
half
supposed to
empty,
show up?
but for a hissing puddle of sweet brown syrup, cooled over a pile of smoldering coals just outside the barn door. The barn
Oh,
itself
okay,
was
it shows
warm
up.
and
Never
snug,
mind.
filled with lantern light and sweet scent of sugary treats.
That was
Quite the
nothing like
contrast
fire
to the chilled
underneath.
night outside. Even so, Applejack couldn't help drawing the cool air into her lungs with a satisfied smile as she stepped out to look for her sister. She loved this time
I
of
know
year.
where this is
Winter
going.
would be here soon enough, it was true, and that had its own work and worry, just like spring and summer. But the autumn months, after harvest, were a time of relaxation and fun for the Apple family. With the crops in, safe and sound, money would be rolling into Sweet Apple Acres before too long. It was a tradition in their family to share the wealth, and what better way
This has
than to
been
provide
passed
all
down
kinds
the
of
apple
apple-themed
apple
treats and games for kiddies at
generations.
Nightmare Night. Nightmare Night. It was the first holiday to
Nightmare
come
Night.
after the
That's what
harvest,
they call
so
Halloween
the
in
Apple
this.
family always did it big. Of course, the holiday had always been more about treats than tricks at Sweet Apple Acres. Every year, Granny Smith would have tubs set up in Ponyville for the townsfolk to bob for apples. She had taken to turning in early and letting Applejack make sure that they stay full and crisp, delicious apples. Even so, Granny Smith was
Charmel
still an
apples.
important part of the festival. Every year since Big Mac was old enough to pull a plow, he'd offer hay rides for the community as well.
Well,
Even
he's
Apple
Big
Bloom
Mac.
seemed to be taking more of an interest in the festivities. Last year, she'd gone
Ew.
around with Pinkie Pie collecting candy with her friends. But this year, she seemed to be really interested in helping Applejack make up a few homemade treats to pass out at the festival in town.
Don't
A
worry, it
few of
won't
the
make sense
recipes
later.
Apple Bloom was trying out seemed a mite odd, but Applejack didn't mind trying new things so long as they were able to finish making their batch of usual treats as well. The only problem was, after helping Applejack spare a few apples and dip them in the bubbling caramel, Apple Bloom seemed to quickly lost interest and wandered off to do her own thing. Really, Applejack shouldn't have been surprised. Apple Bloom had a habit of getting distracted by the least little thing. They should have been done making treats hours ago, but As it was, she still had about half the apples left to dip. Worse, she was running low on caramel and firewood.
Apple Bloom!
Called Applejack again as she went to the side of the barn where the wood pile was kept to get a few fresh sticks.
Wherever you run off to, get your flank back here, Missy. We got a lot of apples to dip before we store them in the barn to dry, and we're gonna burn through the midnight oil with all your diddly-daddling.
The country pony paused and listened.
This isn't good.
The fog that curled through the orchard tonight did strange things to the
Look
familiar
at the
sounds of the
change.
farm,
That isn't
muffling
good.
noises that Applejack would normally find comforting and amplifying those she couldn't identify. She didn't hear the sounds of tiny hoofs coming her way, nor did she hear her little sister's voice calling out in response. What she thought she heard was giggling. High, girlish giggling, just on the edge of her hearing. It wasn't something any pony wanted to hear all alone on a dark night.
Easy, girl. You're just spooking yourself.
Yeah,
Applejack
it's
reassured
probably
herself
just the
under her
wind.
breath as she quickly piled a few dry branches on her back for the fire. She really wished that Granny Smith didn't go to sleep so early and that Big Macintosh wasn't off in town helping set up for tomorrow's celebration. More than anything, she wished Apple Bloom would stop wandering off on her own. A farm was no
Yeah,
place for a
Apple
young
Bloom, quit
filly to go
dilly-dallying and
exploring
help
by
out
herself,
AJ.
especially at night. Applejack had heard too many horror stories of colts playing around on farm equipment and hurting themselves. Perhaps more dreadful were the stories of fillies falling into old sinkholes or boarded up wells and no pony finding them until months later, if they found them at all. A thought suddenly occurred to Applejack as she headed back towards the front of the barn.
Apple Bloom, you better not be playing a trick on me. It ain't Nightmare Night just yet.
When there was no answer, she tried.
I'll tell Big Macintosh on you.
There was still no answer. At least, no answer she wanted to acknowledge as being more than a figment of her imagination. As she rounded the side of the barn, a sudden burst of flame whooshed into life, painting the fog bright orange. Applejack jumped back, the firewood she carried on her back scattering at her hooves. She almost bolted there and then, but calmed down when she realized the flames were under the cauldron. Some pony had gotten the fire going again while she'd been back at the woodpile. Had Apple Bloom gone to fetch more wood and she missed her going around the other side of the barn? As Applejack grew closer, she saw whomever had built up the fire had used too much fuel. The flames were licking up the side of the cauldron, bright and hungry. Already she could see that the caramel that had been left in the pot was bubbling up. At this rate, it would burn and
Save
blacken
the
going
caramel,
completely to waste.
AJ!
Oh, Apple Bloom, sweetie, you can't use this much wood. You need a low heat for this kind of treat.
She went to drag the cauldron out
Why
of
do
the
you
fire
think-
and save what
Why
she
do you
could of the
imagine
caramel,
that the
careful
nightmares
to
would
avoid
actually
the
have a
leaping and
blast
flickering
from this?
flames, but
You know, have
found
a
the
bit
old
of
pot
fun.
wouldn't budge.
Doing something
It
like
was
this.
usually only this heavy when it was full, not half
And
empty
why
like
do I
it
imagine
was.
the egg boss is getting
Applejack did
involved
the
in
best
this?
she could, tugging on the cauldron inch by inch away from the
Ah,
barn.
dang it!
But once it was on a
Danny,
patch of
how do you
damp
feel
dirt,
about
she
that
went
idea?
about kicking sand over what flames she could, trying to tame the wildfire. The flames subdued a bit, so Applejack decided she'd try to get her sister's help to get the cauldron back in place.
Apple Bloom, you in here?
Asked Applejack as she cantered into the barn. The lanterns had been blown out.
Oh.
By the light from the fire, Applejack could tell the barn was empty on the inside. Empty, that is, save for a pile of sticky popsicle sticks that used to have caramel apples on the end,
Oh.
sitting boldly on the benches. Even the apples that hadn't even been dipped yet were missing. A tiny voice.
Gluttony, is that you?
That's what was going on.
Apple Bloom, I can't believe you. These treats were for tomorrow to share with all the fillies and colts who came looking for sweets to bite. How could you and your friends be so selfish to eat them all before they even had a chance to dry?
Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo had to be in on this. Sweet Apple Acres produce might be good enough that a filly would like to try to eat a whole bushel in one go, but one filly couldn't have eaten all the apples Applejack had dipped. Even 3 managing it was a stretch, but that was the only logical conclusion she could come to.
Oh.
Apple Bloom, you get out here, young Missy. You and your friends. Or I swear I'll be writing a letter to Celestia about how I learned to break fillies' rumps with my bare hooves.
Still, there was nothing but silence.
No answers.
Almost. There was that high, girlish giggling again. It sounded like it was coming from the cauldron,
Oh,
but
great. Is
couldn't
Mama
be,
involved in
right?
this?
it didn't
Because
make
she's
any
the only one with the
sense.
cauldron.
How could the girls be hiding in that bubbling hot mess? Applejack moved tentatively towards
no.
the cauldron, her eyes darting back and forth. Beyond the glow of the fire, there was nothing but darkness, mist, and fading moonlight.
Stop
The
flashing that
smoke
thing,
of
will you?
partially quenched fire burned her eyes as she looked into the big black pot, ready to jump back at the first sign of a trick. She froze, her eyes locked on the sad, shriveled-up figure curled into a ball
Oh
at the
my
bottom of the
God.
pot. She was completely covered in bubbling brown sugar, but even so, Applejack could tell right away the tiny figure was her sister.
Apple Bloom!
She screamed.
Oh man!
Applejack reached into the cauldron with her bare hooves, burning her limbs on the still hot metal as she closed them around Apple Bloom's unmoving form. The pain of her searing flesh nothing compared to the agony that tore at her heart.
Oh,
How had
man.
this happened? Had her sister somehow fallen in? Why hadn't she cried out? Why hadn't she screamed? Applejack ran into the barn where there was a trough of water and quickly
What's the
dumped Apple
vegans?
Bloom's body into the cold liquid. The caramel was already starting to set. The sticky gunk wouldn't come off. Applejack did the best she could, but a part of her knew that it was already too late.
Oh man.
Her sister wasn't breathing. She tried hammering on her tiny chest, put a mouth to her sister's, and breathed air into her lungs.
Oh.
It did nothing but leave a sickly sweet taste in her mouth, pieces of half-dried caramel sticking to her lips. That was too much for her. She fell back on her haunches,
Oh.
wiping her mouth with her hoof, trying to get
What?
rid of the taste.
Okay, this is gonna sound dark,
Taste of
but why
death
am I
and candy.
imagining this happening?
She felt her gorge
With,
rise
Clove
as
and
tears
Cassia.
pricked in the corners of her
Oh
eyes.
man, I am sorry for putting that
Could this
image,
have
Danny.
happened?
I am sorry.
She blamed herself. What kind of horrible sister was she? That's when she heard the laughter again. It filled the barn, vibrating through the straw beneath her flank, and seemed to echo inside her chest, inside her head. There were words, too, in a childish
Here it
sing-song voice.
Nightmare night, what a fright.
Applejack got up, backed away,
Indeed, it was
wildly
a fright.
turning her head back and forth, trying to
AJ,
find the
get
source
out
of the
of there.
song and the
Get
horrible
out of
mocking
there.
laughter.
Where are ya? Who are ya? Did you do this? Did you do this to Apple Bloom? What did my sister ever do to deserve this?
Applejack howled,
Applejack,
tears of
get
anger
out
and
of
sadness
there.
spilling from her eyes. She backed slowly out of the barn, looking at her sister's body, turning around and around. Where was the laughter coming from? She stumbled out into the cool night air, still reeling from what happened to her sister, still haunted by the laughter of children she couldn't see. If she had watched where she was going, she might not have tripped over the well-placed hoof. She didn't realize she had stumbled into the fire until the flames were chasing themselves through her tail and flickering up into her mane. Panicked beyond all reason, she reared back on her hind legs and fell right into the still cooling cauldron. She screamed then, loud enough to wake the dead, as her flesh burst and blistered from the heat and the sticky caramel seeped into her wounds.
Not good.
Everywhere the metal of the pot touched, a layer of her
Get
skin
out.
stuck, sizzling and smoking as it parted from the rest of her body. Blinded by the smoke of her own burning flesh, the stench choking her even as she fought for more air which to scream. She tried desperately to climb out of the cauldron. The sides, slick with her own blood,
no.
slipped beneath her painful fumbling. The giggling rose all around her, the laughter loud and menacing. A face peered out of the smoke. It was huge, its eyes pinwheels of madness, its teeth sharp and pointed.
Give us something sweet to bite.
Sang gleefully as it
Oh, by the way,
lunged
that's
forward.
Emo Gak doing that
Applejack
voice
felt
right
those
there.
sharp teeth close around half of her
That's
face.
pretty frightening.
One eye went dark as it popped between a pair of sharp fangs. Her shriek faded to a gurgle as the monster ripped
fight
away
an
part of her face
Applejack!
and throat, chewed and then swallowed the bloody wad of flesh. With a burst of adrenaline,
I'm
Applejack
starting
managed to
getting
scamper
reminder
out
of
of the
the Deadly
cauldron and
Spawn
crumble to the
slightly.
earth. She felt something
And no, I
hot
haven't
as
watched
she
that
hit the
movie.
dirt. But it didn't matter. She just had to run. She had to get away. She couldn't get up properly, but still she dragged herself through the dirt. A mad idea seized her. If she could get to the barn, just get to the barn and close the
Again,
door,
The Deadly
she could buy
Spawn is
herself some
a
time to think.
gore-filled
Just
movie.
think.
That's all I got.
Tears spilling from her one remaining eye, she labored over the earth. The few feet between the fire and possible safety now seeming miles. Any moment she expected the monster's teeth to find her again. With mild disbelief, Applejack tumbled into the barn and slammed the door behind her. She panted heavily, finding it hard to suck air into lungs while there was a hole in her throat.
Oh.
She started coughing uncontrollably, suffocating on
She
her own
isn't
blood
dead
and
at this
terror.
point.
Something slammed into the door behind her like a freight train, making her shriek and whimper. The wood splintered as laughter shook the front of the entire barn. She stood on her hind legs with her back to the barn door, bracing her burnt and melted limbs against the door and the slippery straw-covered floor as best she could. This couldn't be happening. She couldn't handle something like this on her own. She needed help. She needed help right now.
Yes.
She opened her mouth to scream again, this time to yell as loud as she could for help. She felt something suddenly burst between her jaws. It happened as if it was in slow motion. The wooden door blossomed,
Oh, hey, the
opening
Louis
like
just
a
mentioned me.
rare red flower, all spines and petals
And a
gaping
kite?
wide as if to entice a lover.
That's a rare
Shards
type of
and
flower, I
shrapnel
think.
shred open Applejack's back, sending a shower of scarlet
Yeah, this is
spurting
definitely
from
feeling
her
like the
that
Nightmares
splashed
thing
across
right
the
now.
barn door in a pattern that looked almost like wings. She never had time to register the pain as the thing that caused the hole, something large and cylindrical, was forced clean through her back and up through her ribcage and into her mouth from her throat. She couldn't tell what it was at first, with the taste of
She's
dirt on the
still
fence post
alive!
mixed with her own blood as the sharp end skewered her tongue. She felt her teeth break and her jaw pop loose from the rest of her skull as with another forceful shove, the post shattered the door behind her and the creature began to force its own body through. She felt parts of her she had never felt before burst within her body as the thick shaft of the wood churned her internal organs to mush. The monster, whatever it was, tore through the barn door like it was tissue paper, a look of triumph on what she could see of its twisted face. She didn't even feel the shards of wood embedded in her back anymore, only the wood that had impaled her.
Something sweet
It
to
was
bite
almost
indeed.
relief when her burning lung collapsed, and the
AJ is
rhythm of her
covered in
heart slowed,
caramel.
stuttering its
So,
final beats.
Charmel
The last thing that
Applejack,
flickered across her
anyone?
consciousness before she finally died was a figure raising her into the air, smiling, giggling all the while, and taking another bite of the caramel-coated Applejack.
Oh man. That's one way to start up a story. Something freaky. And the past?
Why is it so cold, Mummy?
It's been cold like this for the last few years, dear Art. You know that. Those Pegasi have been trying to freeze us out, thinking we'd give them more food if they made it hard for us. But we'll show them the Earth ponies are made of sterner stuff.
Yeah, definitely the past.
Pegasi? Are you hopping on about that again, sweetie?
Who else, dear? You said yourself that when you're out playing the field with my brother that you've seen them darting about in the clouds above.
I tried to figure out what those high mighty unicorns have done to make it snow and cold all the time. You mark my words, those Pegasi have stumped his ass about all this. It's magic that's in those clouds, and magic what's bringing this unnatural cold upon us.
Could the unicorns make them go away, Daddy? Could they make it stop being so cold?
They can do anything, love. Anything at all, them.
This
Why,
sounds
just
a
a
little
fortnight
bit
ago
like...
when I and your uncle went to deliver our Tid, I seen one of them bouncy unicorns
This feels-
taking some of our produce and putting it into a box of his. Powered by
What is this-
magic
what is
it
this,
was.
British or something?
One end went in strawberries, the other end out popped this strange creamy concoction that was as cold as any snowdrift.
Yeah, they're
Ah,
British.
you and your tales. You'll be giving her ideas about those hornheads are all powerful next. Their hooves are in the dirt as much as ours, but they act like they're even higher in the clouds than the Pegasi. Not so different from us Earth ponies, that lot. But they always have to be putting on airs. We don't need you spreading their propaganda for 'em.
But it's true. He said he ran something called a sweets shop. Told me to stop in with my daughter next time I was in town and he'd give her a treat.
Last time you were in town? Do you mean the city, Daddy? The castle? Oh, I've never been. You know how much I've always wanted to go, Daddy. To see the high lords and ladies.
Yes, well, your Dar and I will have to have a talk about that. You get on with your chores. Step lively. Brisk work of the limbs will do wonders to keep the chill out your bones.
Oh. Said days of okay.
It was a bright autumnal day, about a week before Nightmare
pretty
Night would
much
begin.
the past.
The breeze
Okay,
was
this is
crisp and
the,
sent leaves
sort of
dancing and tumbling
present.
playfully in the streets,
Wait,
even as the sun still
Oh
shone
yeah, this is
merrily. Though it was sad to see
this is
summer
not
end,
the
the
redeeming
ponies of
Diamond Tiara,
Equestria knew the
rather,
necessity
this
of all
is
4
the,
seasons.
before
So
that
most
season
of the
was a
town of
thing.
Ponyville walked with a spring in their step,
Just silent,
despite the chill that hung in the air. None were perhaps as chipper as Pinkie Pie, though, the self-proclaimed friend of every pony. The pink mare was a ball of energy as she went about putting up the decorations for the coming Nightmare Night celebrations. There was so much to do. Even with help, she had to start a week in advance to get it all done in time. This was no chore for Pinkie, though. She loved decorating like this and watching the town transform before her eyes from its usual quaint self to one just a little bit scary, but fun. Since it was afternoon and school had let out,
Of course,
a few of
Pinkie
the town's
would do
children
that.
were helping her spread fake spider webbing around the post office. They had to clear away a few very
Let's just
real
hope Link doesn't
cobwebs
come
before
by.
they started. Not many ponies
call it
visited the
the
post
post
office
office.
themselves these days.
Ugh. This is a waste of time.
Hi, Diamond Tiara.
Daddy insists we help with these decorations when no pony
Like,
is
this
ever
is
going to
totally
see them.
lame.
Moaned Diamond Tiara.
The only ponies that bother with the post office are practically Nightmare Night decorations themselves.
The
Ooh.
pampered filly sneered at a pair of nearsighted elderly ponies who were busy trying to figure out how many bits it would cost to send a package to Baltimore.
Totally.
Agreed
Silver
Silver
Spoon.
Spoon, as usual.
It's a waste of time when their eyesight is so bad they can't even actually see the decorations anyway.
Ooh.
Silver Spoon turned her nose up and walked over to the box of decorations, inspecting them.
Besides, if
I find it kind of weird the
might
fact
give
that they're
them a
Earth
heart
ponies, yet they
attack.
pretty much
She
act like
said
they're
with fake
unicorns from
concern.
Candlelight.
We should really move on somewhere
I find that
more
kinda weird.
interesting, like the mall or the bowling alley. At least then we could do a little shopping or have some fun. After we finish decorating, of course.
She
You're not even
feigned a
doing
look of
anything.
innocence, knowing from experience that her silver tongue and good looks were the key to getting her way.
Now, girls, the mayor has entrusted us to decorate the whole entire town.
Howdy, Pinkie.
Exclaimed Pinkie, spreading her hooves in the air as if to encompass all of Ponyville.
It wouldn't be the whole town if we only hung spider webs and pumpkin lights in storefronts and shopping malls.
Pinkie Pie bubbled as she went about festooning the quiet post office with black and purple streamers.
Besides, it's way more fun to transform an old, boring post office into someplace exciting than it would be to make an already interesting place more exciting.
She smiled awkwardly as
She
the postmaster
does
gave her a
kinda
look
raise a
from behind the
point.
counter.
No offense.
Just then, Apple Bloom, Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo tumbled in front of Pinkie Pie all at
Oh.
once. They were supposed to be spreading the webbing in the rafters, but had
Sweetie
somehow
Belle
managed to get
and
themselves hopelessly
Scootaloo.
tangled up with one another.
Oh.
Silver Spoon and Diamond Tiara led the other children in laughter at their misfortune. It didn't take Pinkie long to extract the trio of friends, though she almost got herself just as badly tangled in the process.
Oh.
What happened? I'm sorry, Pinkie Pie. It was all my fault. Me and my friends got to talking about all the candy we was gonna get come Nightmare Night, and I must have gotten a little distracted.
Apple Bloom
Oh.
grinned sheepishly.
Yeah!
Chimed in Scootaloo.
We had a ball last year going around with you and collecting candy.
Ah,
Even
right,
after we
to
left
the
half of
episode,
it for
Lunar
Nightmare
Eclipse.
Moon, we still had plenty to share.
Added Sweetie Belle cheerfully.
And I'm sure we'll have lots again this year, even after we leave our tribute. Leave it to you blanks to still be giving up your candy to Nightmare Moon. Every pony knows it's just Celestia's sister. She's not going to gobble you up if you don't give her some of your candy.
Diamond Tiara exclaimed, rolling her eyes.
We kept all our candy
That's like
last
saying
year.
that if you don't give
Added
up your
Silver
candy,
Spoon.
the giant
As you
Tasmanian
can see,
devil,
We're doing just
the
fine.
gluttonous
It was
Tasmanian
truly
devil will
amazing,
come and
too.
eat you.
You know the neighborhood where I
Can
live?
I eat
Think
them?
about
Can I eat them?
hopeful. We were still eating Nightmare Night candy at
Sorry.
heartwarming.
The spoiled fillies smiled,
Of
drinking their
course.
pure jealousy, both real and imagined.
Oh!
But I'm sure it won't
You
matter
had
if
to
you
mention
do decide
envy,
to leave
didn't
a
you?
few fun
I was joking
sized
about
treats in
gluttony,
the dirt.
but still.
Grinned Diamond Tiara in a predatory fashion.
Oh wait, greed
So
him
the
and
big bad
mentioned it too.
princess won't gobble you up.
At that, the pair laughed uproariously. Apple Bloom and her friends just
Of
looked at each
course.
other. Sometimes
Pretty good
Diamond
job of
Tiara and
keeping them in
Silver Spoon's
character
sense
at,
of humor
well,
just
this
didn't
time of
seem all that
season.
funny. Even so, Apple Bloom wasn't one to back down from a challenge.
Oh,
Well,
Apple
we ain't gonna
Bloom.
leave any of our candy then either. In fact,
Oh,
I
no.
bet we can collect more candy than you two, even with your fancy full-size candy bars.
Oh.
said the fiery-haired filly.
Oh, really? Care to make a bet then? Whoever has the most candy wins. Let's say the losers have to give up all their candy.
Said Silver Spoon,
Oh.
a grin playing at the corner of her mouth.
You're on!
Cried Scootaloo.
Oh,
Now hold on, girls. You can't
One.
go crazy hoarding candy like that.
Don't be
Even
greed.
an offering for Nightmare Moon is an important Nightmare Night tradition.
Yeah,
Said Pinkie Pie.
that's gonna come into play later.
Sure,
Trust me.
it's tempting to hold on to all those gummy bears, and candy apples, and candy bars, and pixie sticks,
Pixie
and
sticks?
lollipops, and gumdrops, and...
Pinky.
What were we talking about?
The pink pony fanned herself with a rubber bat, clearly flustered.
Oh, right. But you couldn't really keep them all for yourself. That's not what Nightmare Night is all about. Right?
I guess you're right, Pinkie Pie.
Said Sweetie Belle, looking down sadly at her hoofs.
Backing out of our wager already then?
Asked Diamond
Just
Tiara with a
ignore
snide
them.
look on her face.
They're just trying to
I
get
guess it
the
would be
best of you.
difficult for you blank flanks to compete with us if you're going to fall for all this tradition nonsense. Looks like we win by default. We'll expect your candy at the end of Nightmare
What?
Night.
They didn't even...
Don't go throwing too much of it away at the foot of some statue in the woods now.
Now hold on.
Cried Apple Bloom.
We ain't gonna be throwing away any candy, and we ain't gonna be welching on no bet. You have your candy ready to fork over to us by the end of Nightmare Night, and may the best Billy win. Maybe we should move on, girls.
Thank you,
Tried
Pinkie.
Pinkie Pie, a little nervous at how serious things had gotten between the young friends.
Who
They're
wants
not
to help
even
me
friends.
decorate the library?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Go to the library.
Pinkie Pie!
Exclaimed Twilight, Sparkle, and Bafflement.
Twilight!
What are you doing?
A gaggling of fillies and colts had invaded
Hey,
Twilight
listen to
Sparkle's
the
home and were
music.
clambering clumsily over her neatly arranged shelves. She and Spike had worked the better
This
part
is
of the
Twilight
afternoon taking
Princess
the autumn
music?
audit of what books were checked out and what books were checked in,
Hmm.
and what books were in need of repair before they could be returned to the shelves. Now, entire stacks of
Oh,
books
this
were
is Clock
slipping,
Town.
sliding, and
My
plain
bad.
being knocked over
Clock
by
down for
careless
Majora's
little hooves.
Mask.
And in the middle of it all, Pinkie Pie stood cheerfully, half covered in fake spider webs and streamers.
Oh, hey, Twilight.
Said the pink pony, clearly delighted to see her friend.
Ah.
In the background, Snips and Snails tripped over one another in their efforts to hang bat-winged streamers along the stairs leading up to Twilight's room. They landed in a clumsily laughing heap that nearly toppled an
Okay.
entire shelf of books,
I was hoping you'd be home soon.
said Pinkie Pie.
Mayor Mare is having me decorate all the public buildings in Ponyville this year for Nightmare Night. But it wouldn't be half as much fun getting the library ready if I didn't have your input as well.
Pinkie Pie draped a forelimb over Twilight's shoulder and guided
Well,
her
as
through
long
the
as it's
barely
not
controlled
overly
chaos
decorated,
of laughing
I
and
guess
shouting
it would
children.
be fine.
I was thinking bats everywhere, hanging from the ceiling and the stairs.
You know, I think Batman would kind of be disagreeing on that.
When they walk in.
Twilight couldn't help being distracted as fillies ran back and forth, some trailing decorations in their wake, while others just seemed to be playing some kind of game.
But Pinkie, this is my home! We didn't decorate the library last year, inside or out.
I know, and I got to thinking that was a real shame. It's unfair that folks can only enjoy the fun of Nightmare Night downtown or in the big shops, and not in other places like boring post offices and libraries.
Twilight glared at her friend.
No offense. I just wanted to make sure that no matter where a pony goes in Ponyville, that the spirit of Nightmare Night will be with them. You know?
Twilight stared into Pinkie Pie's
Okay.
sincere, grinning face. For all the bedlam, it was tough to face that hopeful, well-meaning smile and not cave just a little. I guess, Pinkie Pie, if the mayor approves. The party pony gave a happy little leap, pounding one hoof in the air before Twilight quickly added, "But please don't go overboard, and do your work quietly. This is still a library, and other ponies have the right to expect peace and quiet when they come here." Pinkie Pie gave a little salute and
Twilight.
seemed as though she was about to say
The
something in reply
library
when a
isn't
loud
that
crash
big.
came from the back of the room. With all the close calls, it was a matter of time before an entire shelf of books would be knocked to the
ow.
floor. Far from any pony being hurt, however, the perpetrators were shouting at one another amid the wreckage of scattered books. Diamond Tiara and Apple Bloom's animated argument threatened to damage the books further as each filly seemed to be stomping mad.
Well, not.
Well, so.
Well, not.
Well, so.
Girls! What's all this about? Cried Twilight, using her magic to separate the fillies.
She started it. She keeps saying we're gonna chicken out, but I don't want to stand for her talking about us that way.
Cried a very agitated Apple Bloom.
Oh, please, Apple Blank.
Sneered Diamond Tiara.
I get it. That's kind of
Like
clever.
there's anything you can do about it.
Twilight settled the pair back to the floor, but still held them back from each other. Twilight turned to
Thank
Pinkie
you,
Pie
Twilight.
as she struggled to keep the fillies from hurting themselves or any pony else.
What in Equestria are they talking about?
She demanded.
Oh, you know how kids are.
Mumbled the pink pony, smiling nervously.
We kind of have a bet going about who can collect the most candy.
Pinkie quickly added to the fillies.
But they're just going to have to collect that much more after they leave some for Nightmare Moon. Right, girls?
F.
Replied Silverspoon
that
flippantly,
Sigmar's
standing with her nose in the
catchphrase.
air next to her friend.
No way!
Retorted Scootaloo, jumping in the air and fluttering her little wings in irritation.
Leaving a tithe of candy for Nightmare Moon is one of the oldest traditions of Nightmare Night.
Said Twilight Sparkle,
Scootaloo
shocked.
can't even fly yet,
No
guys.
bet could be worth breaking from tradition like that. I mean, remember last year? Wasn't it fun to leave a little candy so Nightmare Moon wouldn't get you?
Jeez, listen to her.
Boy.
Said Diamond Tiara dismissively,
Oh,
sharing
this
a glance
again.
with Silverspoon.
You'd think she was just some common pony and not Celestia's student. Did you leave candy for your teacher's sister?
Well, no.
Admitted Twilight.
However, I did when I was younger. Every Nightmare Night, my brother and I would leave a little pile next to the statue in Canterlot. Though that was just a statue of Luna, not really Nightmare Moon. Celestia didn't seem to like the image of her sister as a monster. I remember when...
Twilight's
boy.
eyes grew misty
Here we
with
go.
memory, but Silverspoon
Flashback.
sighed heavily, interrupting her.
Kidding.
I'm sure you have many wonderful memories of the good old days.
Don't worry.
Luna's
Diamond
going
Tiara and
to
Silver Spoon are gonna
any
get their
pony
just
that doesn't leave her
desserts.
candy. She didn't get you after all.
She pointed out disdainfully.
Of course not, silly. Twilight isn't a filly.
Laughed Pinkie Pie, trying to defuse the situation. Twilight, for her part, however, seemed to grow thoughtful.
No, I guess she's right, Pinkie Pie. There's no point in lying. Princess Luna may be a little strange, but she's not dangerous. Nightmare Night is fun pretend, but honestly, I don't see any harm from them not giving up a bit of their candy, even if it is against tradition.
Pinkie Pie seemed
Hey,
genuinely
Winter
shocked
Wrap-Up
by her friend's
basically had its
words,
tradition, and
Don't
that
listen to her,
basically got
girls.
broken.
said Pinkie urgently.
We have these traditions for a reason. The decorations, the costumes, the jack-o'-lanterns, the offerings to Nightmare Moon. They
Pinky's
were
got
all
a
started
point of
to
what's
protect
going on.
us. There's no good reason to turn your back on all of that now. Not so close to Nightmare Night.
The usual jovial pony pleaded, her deep blue eyes wide
That's
with
like
worry,
saying the
girls in
well,
Twilight gave
if
Pinkie
you don't
a
do
funny
anything
look,
on
not really
Halloween
understanding
night,
what
the
all the
nightmares
fuss
will
was
come out
about.
and get you
Here, I'll show
and
you.
cause
I
trouble and
know it's around here
mischief.
somewhere.
Pinkie Pie started rummaging through the fallen books. It always amazed Twilight that regardless of how disorganized the library might become, Pinkie Pie could always turn up just the book she was looking for.
It's Pinky.
She wouldn't normally
Don't
have
question.
suspected it to be something to do with the party pony's pinky sense, but the alternative was that Pinkie Pie might have a better grasp of the library's organization than Twilight, Spike, and Owlicious combined. Somehow, that was a more unsettling conclusion than Pinkie's sixth sense.
Here it is.
Pinkie Pie cried triumphantly as she lifted an old dark book from one of the piles that were bound for the
Oh.
repair room. It didn't look like much, or even as if it had anything to do with Nightmare Night. Instead of the mare and the moon, a crescent eye, or some other Nightmare Night symbol, there was only a woodcut of a few pieces of candy carved into the cover.
Ye old tricks and treats.
Y'all
Wow,
tricks
Pinkie,
and treats.
that book looks like it's seen better days.
Twilight examined
Twilight,
the
you
book
didn't
closely.
see that
It
book?
was hard to tell if it had been damaged in the fall from the shelves or if it had already been in such poor shape.
You should put it back so Spike can fix it before it falls apart.
Twilight's magic enveloped the book, but Pinkie Pie held onto it firmly.
Uh-oh.
No, seriously, Twilight.
The party pony urged.
You and the girls should really read what this book has to say. There's more to Nightmare Night than just getting as much candy as possible.
Pinkie looked shocked
Pinky's
at her
on
own words,
to
but
something,
struggled all
guys.
the harder against the pull of Twilight's magic.
And this is me saying that. You know how much I love sweets.
Let go, Pinkie.
Oh
Twilight
no.
strained, her magic
Twilight.
insufficient to shake off her friend's oddly adamant grasp. By now, Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon had wandered away to make some other pony's life miserable.
Of
But the
course.
Cutie Mark Crusaders watched the struggle between Twilight and Pinkie Pie go back and forth. All three winced as a loud rip echoed throughout the library, and a cascade of book pages fluttered through the air. Between the two of them, Twilight and Pinkie managed to break the book's
not
fragile
good.
spine, sending its delicate pages in all directions. Both ponies seemed shocked at what had happened. Started Apple Bloom.
We'll just head on now, Pinkie.
Yeah.
I've got
Awkward enough.
chores and I need to get going back home.
Yeah, and I promised Rainbow Dash I'd pick up her dry cleaning.
Speaking
Added
of-
Scootaloo
wait.
as she nudged a distracted Sweetie Belle.
Wait. Rainbow Dash.
Oh, yeah, and I need to make
Dry
sure
cleaning?
that Rarity's order of new material for her Nightmare Night costume came in.
Managed Sweetie Belle, her eyes glued firmly on the floor. The trio scurried away before what would surely be an explosive argument between the two friends, but Sweetie Belle hung back a moment. Her eyes had lit on a few of the pages that had fallen from the old tattered book. No pony was looking as she discreetly stuffed the pages into her school bag and trotted quickly after her
Oh, she got
friends.
bad with her. Okay. And that was chapter 1. That was part 1 of Something Sweet to Bite, and I have to say that was definitely kind of a freaky start. I mean, that part with Applejack definitely caught me off guard the first time I viewed this. And, well, yeah. Pretty much this is setting up for the event, so what's gonna happen later on in the story, so, yeah. Anyways, I hope you guys liked this video, and I will see you all in, part 2. We're gonna get much more into depth into this. Anyways, by then, see y'all later.